I was buying a whole lot of dumb things. I was buying nice, fancy watches. I was upgrading my car. I was spending my money on things that were cool, that made me look cool. I mean, I was in the event planning business, which is a glorified way of saying I was a party promoter. And in that business, in that club scene, you want to look like you have money because that's just kind of the industry that it is. It's a very showy industry. Even if you don't have money, you want to look like you made it. And so I made money and I spent money on dumb things. Well, that's when I started reading books. I started by reading Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, and then I read Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey, and I completely changed what I did with my money because I had no idea. I mean, this is how naive I was. I didn't know what an asset was. I didn't know what a liability was. I didn't know what an investment was. I didn't know what cash flow was. I didn't know what real estate investing was. I didn't know what a dividend was. But I started learning, and I learned that assets are things that put money in your pocket. Liabilities are things that take money away from your pocket. So now when I was putting money into my car, that was a liability. When I was putting money into my watches, that was a liability. Assets are things that I'm buying to make me money. That means I can make money and then take this money and put it somewhere else. And then this money is going to work while I'm sleeping or doing something else, and it's going to be working to make me more money. I had no idea that was possible. And the crazy thing about this was I was doing good in school. I studied hard in school. I was achieving. I went to a good university. I got in. But I never learned a thing about financial education. I never learned a thing about investing. I never learned a thing about assets versus liabilities. I knew a lot about organic chemistry. I knew a lot about physics. I knew a lot about biology, even biochemistry. But I knew nothing about assets versus liabilities. I mean, I wanted to be a doctor so I could make money. But I realized that becoming a doctor is something you should do so you could be a doctor. And the money is just kind of a side piece that comes with it. But unfortunately, a lot of people work to get good careers so they can make a big salary, but most people have no idea of how to actually build wealth because those are two completely different things. And that's when I realized, okay, I need to start buying assets. I started buying real estate. Now, I was fortunate that I started investing in real estate during the bottom of the 2008 crash. After that, I started investing in stocks and I started investing in my own business. But what I learned is many people, especially in America today, are putting their money into liabilities, thinking that they're assets. What do I mean by that? For the average American today, what are the biggest purchases? It's your home, it's your car, it's your vacations. And what do we call these things? Well, many people, maybe not if you're watching this channel, will call these things an investment. They'll call these things an asset. My home is my biggest investment that I live in. Well, no, it's not. The home that you live in is a liability. How do I know that? Because the home that you live in is costing you money every single month. You have to pay to live in your home every single month. You have to pay your property taxes. You have to pay your mortgage. You have to pay your insurance. You have to pay your maintenance. You have to pay for your upgrades. All that money is coming out of your pocket. It is a money pit. And then it comes time for you to sell. Now, maybe when it comes time for you to sell, you might be able to sell it for a profit. But you also might not be able to. I have purchased a lot of properties out of foreclosure because people were not able to sell their homes for even what they bought it for. Now, if you can sell your home for a profit, great. Now you might say it's an asset, but you no longer have a place to live. See, when I think about an asset, when I go out and buy a property, it's an asset because the property is generating an income because there's a tenant living there or using this property. And then the income that this property makes is paying for the property taxes. It's paying for the insurance. It's paying for the maintenance. It's paying for the upgrades. The income from the property is paying for everything in the property, and then it's putting some money in my pocket. That's a very different way of looking at a property, looking at real estate versus when I live in a property, it's a money pit. And this is where a lot of people, unfortunately in America, look at your home as the biggest investment, that this is how you build generational wealth, by working to pay down your home. The problem is you can pay down your home, but you still got expenses to pay. You still got to pay property taxes. If your property value goes up, you got to pay more property taxes, which you might say, well, I can pull cash out of my home. Great. But you still got to pay the mortgage payments now. You got to pay for the insurance. You got to pay for the maintenance. You got to pay for the upkeep of this house. And that's coming out of your pocket. That's why I like to treat the home that I live in as a liability, not as an asset. Nothing wrong with having a nice home. Just make sure you can afford it first and understand the difference between an asset, something that makes you money, and something that don't. What about your car? Many people in America will call their car, especially if you pay it off, an asset, because it has some value. You can sell your car for some money. I look at my car like a liability. Why? Because that car is not going to make me any money. I know that if I go and buy a car, I'm going to put the keys in the ignition and it's immediately going to lose value. If we take a new car off of the lot, it's going to lose 16% of its value right there. And then every year that you drive it, it loses more value. Every mile that you drive it, it loses more value. Versus, for me, when I go and buy a car, I don't want to have to worry about that. I know it's a liability. I treat my car like a shirt. If I want to buy a nice shirt, fine. I just want to make sure I can afford it. And so when most people thinking about buying a car, what do they think? They think, I can afford the car because I can make the monthly payments. No, what you're doing is you're making the bank richer and you're making BMW richer when you do that. Your car is a liability. If it's a liability, you don't want to be financing a liability because that means you're paying interest on something that has a limited lifespan, on something that loses value every time you drive it. That's why I don't want to finance my cars. If I want to buy a nice car, fine, but I want to make sure I can afford it with cash. And same with their vacations. How many times have you heard people say it's an investment in your mental health? It's an investment in your free time. It's an investment in your family. No, it is a money suck. Now, I'm not saying don't go on vacations. I want you to go on beautiful, lavish, exotic vacations, but I want you to afford it first. What have we been seeing happen? Everybody sells you this idea that this vacation is an investment. You should buy a timeshare. You should do these things. And now people are going on vacations with their credit card debts. That is a liability. You go to Cancun for $10,000, but then you're going to spend the next 3 years paying it off plus interest. It's a liability. And so now when you work to earn more money, take that money and put the focus on buying assets before you buy liabilities. If you can do this, now what you're doing, it's hard, because now what you're doing is you're working to make yourself rich before you make everybody else rich. And let me show you why this is so hard. Because now when you make $70,000 a year, and your friend makes $65,000 a year, and you are driving a Toyota Corolla, and your friend is driving a BMW, something seems off. When you live in a small little apartment, and your friend has a nice big home, something feels off. When you are not going on the vacation because you're working to stack assets, you're working to save money, you're working to build your wealth, but your friend keeps posting on Instagram how him and his wife keep going to Cancun, they go to Turks and Caicos and they're having all this fun, something feels off. And then when you go to dinner at this person's house, guess what happens? Your wife asks you, how are they making so much money? How are they doing so good? And now you know that this person is not making as much money as you, but they have all these nice things, and yet you have nothing to show for it. See, that's why it feels off. But the reality is, these assets, you can't show off the way you can a Gucci belt. You can't show off your assets the way you can a Gucci purse on Instagram. You can't show off these assets the way you can a BMW. You can't show off these assets you can a big nice apartment or a big nice home. But here's what happens if you stick with it. These assets will start to grow in value. They'll start to make you more money, which will then pay for your vacation. They will then pay for that BMW. They will then pay for that nice home. But it takes patience and it takes discipline, and most people unfortunately would rather have the nice things today than to actually have that wealth. And you might say, well, no, people want to build wealth, they want to be financially free. They don't. Well, if that was the case, why are so many people going into debt to drive cars they can't afford, to go on vacations they can't afford, to live in homes they can't afford, to wear clothes they can't afford? It's because most people would rather have the nice stuff than to have the real wealth. If you enjoyed this clip and you want to continue your financial education journey, I have another video that I think you'll love. All you got to do is click that button right over there. And for those of you who want to stay up to date on the top finance and business news, you can join Market Briefs, my free financial newsletter, by clicking that button below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.